Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and today I'm going to go ahead and continue with the character think animation, specifically with the cleanup process of it. And I really think that I got things looking really nice. You look at the majority of what's going on with the neck, even, and I'm really happy with most of the stuff that I did with the neck. Maybe a little bit more work needs to be done with while he's tilting his head and such, but I like what I've got going on. By and large, like 99% of everything with the neck looks really nice. I think that the face at the beginning of the animation doesn't look quite as good as the face at the end of the animation. That's something that I need to work on from this point forward. But ultimately, I think that I've got a living and breathing character on the screen. One of the things that you run into when you try to do your timing organically is you run the risk of losing all of your perspective. Now, there comes a point inside of this animation where the character wouldn't move like that, and when I was initially putting it all together, I thought, yeah, you know, that's starting to look really good. You know, I'm putting extra emphasis on the keyframes, like what Franco Bianco was suggesting, put extra frames on the keyframes so that there's a momentary pause here and a momentary pause there. But really, the moment of realization when he smiles real big, it just, you know, it needs to be a moment of surprise. And he doesn't move the speed of a moment of surprise, so I need to work on that too. Now, I keep getting a lot of confusion about my last animation video, and I don't understand why there's so much confusion. I changed my voice to sound
like this,
and also to sound like this. And I did that in order to simulate a conversation, so that it wouldn't be confusing as to who's talking at which point in time. I was talking inside of a chat room with professional animators, and I was sharing their advice with regards to the animation that I'm working on right now. It's one of my best videos, but I kept getting all these comments on variously different sorts of social media where people are just asking, why does your voice keep changing? Why does your voice keep changing? And even though inside of the video itself, on multiple occasions, I was referring to me changing my voice as being a conversation. So I don't know where the confusion is coming from. I'm not the only YouTuber who's actually used this technique in order to simulate a conversation, or that somebody else happens to be talking at this point. I think I might maybe use a few other techniques in order to do it in the future, but it really is one of my best videos out there. So if you guys want to hear what a professional animator has to say when critiquing a novice when they're animating, go there, watch that video. But of course, this video it has its own merits as well, because there's a number of things that I cover. Now, the first thing that I'm addressing here inside of the content that you're watching right here is basically me adjusting the timing, because don't get me wrong here. You're typically, if you are a professional animator, what happens is they hand you a number of different little pictures from the storyboard, and they give you a set amount of time, and you have to get your timing to match up the time that they give you. And so you need to draw out your thumbnails and all that and show it to the director, and you need to make sure that you're able to animate to that time. So the first thing that you should be doing is getting your timing laid out with notations on your timeline or your X sheet. Now, I haven't been doing that. It's, for some reason, something that I just haven't really been focusing on. But I will from this point forward. It's something that I'm striving towards understanding, trying to get an animation and its timing done from the very beginning. Now, I studied what Franco Bianco did with my animation here. I looked at just how many frames he used and everything like that, and I thought that was really cool. And so, although I used a lot more frames than what he used for the GIF that I sent him, it's primarily because I went through all this work, and deleting half of the work that I did just didn't really appeal to me. I still wound up cutting out close to half of the drawings that I originally made, but still, this is the reason why you want your timing all laid out from the very beginning, so that you don't wind up pouring a ton of work into a project and you wind up with all this material that you can't even use. So just go ahead and learn from my mistake here. Again, I am a novice at animation, but I'm getting there, and I really genuinely and truly feel as though this animation is actually showing, hey, look, I'm arriving, I'm getting there, I'm getting really close to being a good animator. Now, a little while back in the footage, you might have noticed that I added a few more frames and such like that, and adjusted the position of, say, the character's head, moved the eyebrows a little bit, opened the mouth a little bit more, things like that. Now, what I'm basically doing with those frames is I was adding anticipation and follow-through. Anticipation and follow-through are pretty much the exact same thing, except that anticipation happens just before an action, and follow-through is a movement that takes place right after a movement. Now, what you're doing with anticipation is you sort of move the character the opposite direction that he's going to move, just ever so slightly. With follow-through, you kind of overshoot the movement just a little bit. And what these two things do, anticipation and follow-through, what they do is they make it so that when you make a hold, when you freeze the character in place by exposing a frame for maybe a second or half a second or something, they don't just become a mannequin. It brings them to life just a little bit, and that's what I'm really noticing here with this animation, because that was one of the fundamental problems that I had with this animation throughout the whole process. Just if there was a little bit of a pause that I had earlier, it always seemed a little bit wrong. And a lot of the cleanup that I did for this animation, very little of it is actually done with the brush tool, with the vector level. I'm using the geometry tool. With the geometry tool, there's the polyline. You use it kind of like the pen tool, like what you'd expect sort of with something like Photoshop, and after you go ahead and draw out the basic shape with this polyline, you press enter, and then it goes ahead and creates the final image of the vector. And this is far more effective than actually just using the brush. Now, I wish that the polyline worked a little bit differently. I wish that you could press Control or Alt and be able to just move one of the handles and not necessarily influence what you've already drawn in that process. But it is what it is, and it does work fairly well. You might have to come back with the control point editor here and there and just adjust things a little bit. Now, when you use the polyline, one of the problems is the line thickness. It's very, 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 very uniform. That's fine. That's what the pump tool is used for. You just kind of pump up the line thickness here and there. Throughout the time that you're animating, things start looking really good. Now, since I was using the pump tool in this way, and since I kind of clean up my animations by copying and pasting portions of different frames together, and then adjusting them with the control point editor from that point forward and such like that, it kind of got me thinking a little bit differently. If you notice that as the character turns his head, sometimes using the pump tool to assist in the animation, I'm making lines go thinner and thinner until they disappear completely, especially with the neck, and it looks really good on the neck there. Now, a little bit more information about the pump tool. Now, somebody left a comment in one of my previous videos, and it is important what he happened to mention, but I found the solution so effortlessly and just by experimenting with the program that I've never actually mentioned this about the pump tool. Sometimes the pump tool glitches out and you're not able to even hover your mouse around a line and see the highlight where it's like, okay, registering this line, you can now pump it up or pump it down. If you're experiencing an issue where the pump tool isn't working, there's two things that you can do. Now, I've never had the situation where you just have to close down OpenTunes and restart it again just to get the pump tool to work, but that can do the trick. But what you do, if the pump tool just isn't working the way it should, flip to the next frame, hover your mouse over a few lines. If it starts highlighting the lines and saying, hey, yeah, you can pump this up, just flip back to the frame that you need to adjust, and then go ahead and adjust it. It's as simple as that. Just getting the pump tool to work. Sometimes you just need to prime it with the next frame or something like that. It's a little irritation, but it's not something that is a gigantic bug or something. Now, another thing that you need to keep in mind when you're using the pump tool is that while you're using the polyline, especially with the pump tool winds up creating more control points than you created with the polyline. If you go about deleting all of these extra new control points, you wind up erratically manipulating the thickness of the line, and this can cause some serious problems. It can make the line look really unnatural. But if you clean up your animations the same way I do, where I am copying and pasting little portions of the previous frame or different frames here and there, and then adjusting them with the control point editor and such like that. If you're using that exact same technique, if you keep those extra control points that were generated by the pump tool, what oftentimes happens is it adds a heck of a lot more work for you. And if you keep them and such like that, you're gonna still wind up with a really weird looking line. You need to make sure that you wind up deleting the specific control points that do the less harm to the line from frame to frame. And also, I found that if you kind of play around with the handles a little bit, just so that it doesn't manipulate the shape of the line, but more so affects the pump thickness throughout the duration of the line, you can oftentimes remedy the weirdness of deleting a pumped line. I really hope that I'm making sense here, because you can delete control points that you've made with the pump tool, but you need to think of it strategically. You don't just want to start deleting a bunch of them. You're going to wind up running the line, and you don't necessarily want to keep all of the control points on every single one of your frames that you're copying and pasting to and adjusting with the control point editor, because regardless, you can still wind up with a weird looking line if you don't delete control points along the motion of your character. So just use that advice, and you'll find that it'll work for you. Now, I do have a OpenTunes News video that is coming out this Sunday, and I wanted this video to come out a few weeks ago because OpenTunes 1.2.0 launched, and there's a number of people that have been experiencing some problems. Even though I wanted to release it, and I had the material for the entire video for a number of weeks, Christmas and then the whole issue of New Year celebrations and such, people are off celebrating with family, and the last thing on their mind is OpenTunes and such like that. Some people, they may have been focusing on animation throughout the entire time and such like that, but, my OpenTunes News videos, they attract the most amount of attention, the most views, the most watch time, and such like that, but that's not my primary concern. The whole point of the OpenTunes News videos is also so that I'm able to inform people, and if people are too busy doing other things, that's fine, is that they're busy and such like that, and in fact, congratulations, I'm glad you have friends and family and such, but the issue is, if they're not going to be informed by my video, then why even make the video? So that pretty much wraps it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you didn't like it, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. There's a lot of effort that goes into making these videos, and if you'd like to take a look at any of my other videos, feel free to click on any of them that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great one.